We do not have the minutes ready because our clerk is out on maternity leave. They will be ready for the next meeting to approve. And I would like to welcome you. And what I had said when I was muted that you might not have heard was that if you'd like to speak, just let us know. Please state your name, your affiliation, whether you're a resident, a concerned citizen, or if you're on the fire station committee prior to speaking. And I would like to make a statement first. The role of the advisory board is to ask the questions that we think that the residents of this town will want answers to. When we ask questions, we are not asking those questions with an agenda. We are not asking these questions in support of or not support of the fire station. I do not know how anyone on this board feels about approving or not approving. So our questions are just to get the answers and to inform anyone watching or anyone in person and to be prepared for town meeting for any questions that may come up. I just want to make that clear because sometimes people think that the way we frame questions means that we have a specific mindset, and we do not. So with that said, I will turn it over to Kevin to start our presentation. Thank you.
Do you want to take attendance?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I'm going to quickly take attendance for the people on Zoom and for the minutes record. Brian Bichkowski. Here. Jonathan Hurwitz. Here. Rob Garrity. Here. Mike Gee. Here. David Lutz. Here. Joyce Terrio. Here. Kiara Moore is not here, and I'm Susan Klein, and I am here. So we also have Kevin Champagne from the Fire Station Committee and Chief Kenny and various other people here as well who may or may not be speaking. And we will, again, introduce ourselves prior to speaking with the exception of the board since we already are introduced. All right. Thank you very much for attending. And I will now turn it over to Kevin. Thank you.
Do I need to unmute myself?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair and Advisory Board, for having us here tonight to present the fire station project. I'm going to give a quick summary.
Presentation on the screen.
Yeah, you can do screen sharing.
Right.
I try to screen share and then I will allow, it should pop up and say, allow me to screen share. I think I haven't done Zoom in a very long time. Yep.
That works.
There you go.
Perfect.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Chair and Advisory Board, for having us here tonight to go through the fire station project. I'm going to give a kind of a quick summary of the project, a quick introduction, and then a presentation. And certainly we have other members of the committee here, as well as representative from our owner's project manager, Vertex, Steve Kirby, and our architect, Dora Whittier, is also on the line. So if you think I'm leaving anything out, certainly feel free to interject. So I'm Kevin Champagne. I'm the chair of the Fire Station Building Committee. We were formed in the spring of March 2021 to basically restart the fire station project, which was put on hold after the police station project was completed. As part of that process, in the summer and fall of 2021, we moved to hire Vertex, our owner's project manager, as well as our architect, Dora Whittier, who leads up the design team. Since that time, we've been meeting regularly as a committee, and whatever town residents to attend, been meeting regularly alternating Wednesdays at 6 p.m. And I think they're asking you to mute yourself.
I probably don't need to be on mute.
No.
You got the.
You want me to see if I can mute? They can still hear me?
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Can you still hear me okay? Oh. Your laptop.
Your laptop should be muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're all set now. Okay. It's telling me that I'm muted.
Yes.
All right.
There you go.
Recently, or over this process, we've met with several town boards, including the select board, the zoning board, the planning board, and the design review board, and have received approval from all those boards. The select board, we actually met at various stages along the way, which is part of our charge, meeting with them at the conclusion of feasibility, schematic design, design development, and construction documents to make sure that they were okay with the track that the project was going down. Where we are in the process, the plan is to construct the building at the rear of the site, which will allow the existing facility to remain operational during construction. Currently, the project drawings and specifications are out to bid to subcontractors and general contractors. We're expecting the bids back December 22nd, which will give us time to review the bids and prepare for a special town meeting to have a recommended low bidder, so that when we come to town meeting, the project cost that'll be presented that night will be based on actual construction bids. The project, and you'll see this on a slide as we go through, is currently estimated at approximately $25 million. As I mentioned, though, that is based right now on the design team's estimate and not a contractor's bid. And so the plan is to revise that amount for special town meeting. If the project passes at both town meeting and the ballot, we'll award to the contractor in early February and start construction in the spring. We have a few slides that we want. I'm just going to minimize this here. We have a few slides that we want to flip through here that kind of give a little bit more background to the project. The first slide here is a comparison of square footages that have been prepared over the years. To the far right is our current square footage of 25,670 square feet. We will point out that at the very beginning of the project in the feasibility stage, we started at a square footage of 32,000 square feet. That was based purely on the program that was identified for the building. However, over the design process, we've been able to make areas multifunctional, able to improve corridors and workspaces, as well as transition spaces, and have successfully gotten the square footage down to 25,670 square feet. The other two columns on the left are previous analyses that were done by architects back in 2001 by Allen Lieb Architects. And they had estimated a square footage of 23,686. And the initial square footage estimate done by 2015 by JHA was around 22,000 square feet. We'll point out in the 2016 and 2019 iterations, the square footage was reduced, presumably left based on the funds that were left over as the police station project progressed. But those spaces did not fit all the fire station apparatus in the building. They did not account for any future growth of the department. And there are also numerous building code and NFPA changes that have occurred since 2016. So this is showing the first and second floor of the building. It is proposed as a two-story building with apparatus and community space on the ground floor, and then sleeping quarters and admin spaces on the second floor. On the right, we go through fairly in depth of the multifunctional spaces that were built into this to get the square footage down. To highlight a couple, we've used locker alcoves instead of a large locker room to save square footage. We also are utilizing the large conference room on the first floor to double as training space and community space, as well as using the rear stair tower of the building as training space. Again, trying to save as much square footage out of this building as we could. This slide highlights some square footages and costs of fire stations that are either being considered in nearby communities or have been built recently. I won't go through all of these. If people want to go back to these slides, we certainly can as we're discussing the project. But a couple that I wanted to highlight, one is Medway, that currently has 2 fire stations that total 14,000 square feet. However, at this time, their space is grossly insufficient, and they lack administrative, living, and storage and firematic support spaces. And they're currently in a feasibility study to build a new station. And I also wanted to point out, this is relevant in a couple of these communities. Southbridge had a debt exclusion. They designed a facility of 33,000 square feet. They passed the debt exclusion based on preliminary designs. However, as the design has progressed, the estimated cost of the facility has ballooned substantially to over $35 million. And so they're either going to need to refine the design and shrink the building or have to get additional debt exclusion. So this part of this was our approach to come to town meeting with the actual bid in hand, so that the debt exclusion vote is based on what the actual cost of the facility will be, not an estimate. The next slide is the estimate that we've prepared to date. We can certainly go more in depth on any of these items if people would like, but we did want to point out that this is what we prepared here is really an all-in project cost. It is not just the construction cost of the building. The construction cost of the building is the hard cost there in the center, but what we've tried to identify here are soft costs, which are the cost to hire the OPM and architect, our site exploration fees, commissioning agents, for the envelope and the mechanical equipment of the building. And then as well as identifying contingencies. While we would like to think that this project will go perfectly smooth, no construction project does. And so these contingencies are really the town's fail-safe to any unknowns that are uncovered. Such, one example would be we have to demolish the existing building once the new building is built. We've done a hazardous material survey, but obviously not everything can be exposed without physically tearing the entire building apart. And so if something gets uncovered that was not known, that would come out of the contingencies to pay for that additional hazardous material abatement. This is the project schedule. As you can see, we're actually probably about halfway through the schedule. We started schematic design back in January of 2022. And we're currently bidding the project. As I mentioned before, bids are due at the end of December. We'll move to a town meeting and ballot vote in January. And then hopefully, if we are successful, we'll start construction in the spring. The timeline for this bid really was driven by historical data that shows towns will typically get the best cost pricing from general contractors if it is bid over the late fall to winter. Knowing that contractors are really looking to line up their work for the following spring season. And so that was the approach here to try and take advantage of that potential cost savings. And I'll touch on, so the idea is as I mentioned before, the fire station is built at the rear of the site so that the existing building can remain fully functional while it's being built. That eliminates any relocation costs of the department. Once the new building is built and the fire department is moved in, then the existing building will be demolished and the site work would be completed. Oh, yeah, sure. This is the existing building right here. So this is the apparatus bay, and this is the public safety building. And then this is the temporary trailer that the fire department's currently living in. And this is obviously the new fire station.
Where's Main Street? To the left?
This
Top,
is Main Street
out
right
in
here.
front.
Yep.
So it's actually going behind it.
Correct. It'll be at the rear of the site.
So what is going to become of the space where the old fire station is once
So-
you demolish it, a parking lot?
It's partially a drive aisle for the new fire station, a parking lot, as well as stormwater detention basins. Vegetated, yes. Good point. And the last three slides are just some renderings of the new building. Here, we're showing there's really very little equipment going on the roof, and that is intentional to leave as much flat open space as possible for solar installation. The building will be prepared to be a net zero building. Net zero can't be achieved without constructing some solar canopies in front of the building, which aren't currently allowed by the town bylaws. But the idea would be to basically future-proof the building, that if those canopies were ever allowed and were built, that the building could become a net zero facility. The front of the building, or all exposed sides of the building, have pitched roofs in accordance with town bylaws. And then the green belt vegetation on all three sides of the building. Obviously, we're not showing it up at the front corner facing the church property based on the November town meeting, where that small portion of the church property was rezoned. And then the last two slides are just renderings of the front of the building. Different views there. So here you can see that drive aisle and vegetative basin and parking lot where the existing station is currently located. Steve or Ron or anyone else from the committee, anything else you want to
Is
add?
there enough space? Have you considered using, I don't know, I'm just asking, is there enough space to make this the life flight area for helicopters? Is that spot on top big enough for the current site? So that you don't have to use the Freeman, it's not big enough? Okay.
So we can open it up to questions to the board unless anyone else from the committee has anything else to add.
Sure, I'll jump in. Chair, if I can speak.
Just use the microphone.
We can just keep that chair right there open for anyone who wants to speak.
Hello, Aaron Hunt, Vice Chair of the Building Committee. I also sit on the Design Review Board here in town, and I'm a resident of the town. Just a couple of thoughts to fill in some facts behind Kevin's intro, which was very good. Thank you, Kevin. Two things came to mind. One is we've mentioned a couple of times that the planning is taking into consideration a reasonable amount or a responsible amount of expansion over the future. There was much discussion over making sure we don't have to go through this process again in 5 years because the town has expanded, the department has expanded, and we have to come back and redo this in 5 years. So that was a big part of the thinking. The second thing that came to mind was we designed this project to be a 50-year building. So it's a long-serving, long outlook building. It's not a standard residential house or other buildings. It's intended to be here for a significant period of time. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. How many sleeping bays are there in this design?
Keith, do you want to take that?
There are 9 bids.
And how many do you currently have on staff at any given point?
There's 4, 24/7.
4, 20%. Okay. So this is leaving room for the fact that if we grow and you start needing more firefighters on duty at a time, that there'll be room for them. Okay.
And one of the things that we did early on, I tried to approach that in developing a program with making 5 double occupancy rooms that eventually could be partitioned off. And during the feasibility study phase, it became apparent that if we were to do that, it would end up costing the town more money, because once you take into account all the infrastructure and the things that go into creating the bunk rooms, to then just it's not as simple as I was thinking, in my simple mind, that you could just throw up a partition wall and it'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more that goes into that, because there's environmental controls, CO2 sensors, things like that in each room that make the building's HVAC and mechanical features function in the most efficient and cost-effective way, which then would be astronomically expensive to go back and redo it.
And how are your bathrooms set up? Are they dormitory style, like 5 showers and 5 sinks, or what are we looking at here for the bathroom?
So one of the things that also early on in the process that was important, I think, for the town, but also to me, staying in keeping with what is considered industry standards and best practices, is this building is built to be completely gender neutral. So there are no specific men's or women's facilities. It is completely gender neutral, where each bunk room can become isolated and private, and the locker alcoves can be used for individuals to grab their personal effects or their change of clothes or whatever and go into the bunk room, and that be their private individual space, versus trying to create a women's locker room and a men's locker room, which then in essence becomes dead square footage for 80 or 90% of the day.
Right.
So we eliminated that, and based off of what the U.S. Fire Administration recommends, this building was built to be gender neutral, especially from the operational spaces and the administrative spaces. There is no just, like men's or women's labeled facilities. And there
So this is
are
one big bathroom
No,
and then
it's-
everyone uses their own.
four bathrooms.
Okay.
They each have showers and the needed facilities.
One thing maybe you're going to bring this up, to go back to the 9 bunk rooms versus the 4 bunk rooms that you currently have. Some of that is definitely for expansion and to allow for expansion of the department. However, there are all-call events, and you can correct me if I'm terming this wrong, that staff from surrounding towns will need to come and stay at the fire department. Currently, when those calls occur, they need to sleep on the floor or in the jail cells that are still there from when the police department vacated, that those bunk rooms would also be used for that process.
And just to clarify, so to clearly understand, so we routinely have 4 recalls. A 4 recall means that we're calling in all personnel because either we have a significant emergency or a large scale emergency, or we have storm coverage, something of that nature. And when those happen overnight, if the on-duty crew is not in the building, for example, they are out on the emergency scene. If I have 4 or 6 people back and we're out on an extended length incident, then those 4 or 6 people have nowhere right now to relax or to really, other than just sitting in chairs or in the war room, they don't have a place to stage or to rest. So if it is one of those instances, they would have to either disrupt or move someone else's personal effects from the bunk room that they are already staged in for their 24 hours of duty, which isn't going to happen. That's just it's not going to happen. There's just that unwritten rule in the fire service is not happening. They're not going to go in and disrupt somebody else's personal space for their assigned room. So right now, there's nowhere for those individuals to go. And so in actuality, we would end up using those spaces now, even though they wouldn't be used every single day, they are going to be used regularly.
Mhm.
Can I ask a couple questions, Susan?
Yeah, of course. You go ahead and ask your questions. I'm blind, so I'm gonna go up to the screen so I can actually see. Keep talking though.
Can you go to the, sorry to do this, can you go to the timeline real quick?
You waited till you
I
got there first.
Okay, no, it's a real question.
I can blow it up for you right here.
No, seriously, I'm blind.
So I'm done, Susan. The April 15th constructions on site, you mentioned permitting. Have you identified the permits you're going to need? Have you begun discussing this with the boards that are going to be?
Yes, we've obtained all site permits, stormwater permits from the planning board. So it's really just filing for the building permit.
Have you talked to the Conservation Commission? There are issues with stormwater and underground. I was on the Conservation Commission and they tried to do something at one point and they came before us. So I'm just curious.
Sure. I don't think we're in the Conservation Commission jurisdiction because there's no wetlands.
Planning board.
Okay.
And they had a third-party peer reviewer go through
All right.
everything.
Great. Thank you. That's all I want to know. In terms of the net zero stuff, it's all, is it air source, ground source, combination of, in terms of the heating and the thermal heating of the building? How's that happening?
Ron, do you want to handle that one?
Sure. I'm Ron Lamar from Doran Whittier Architects.
You're muted.
You're muted, Ron.
Can you not hear me?
Or maybe it doesn't look like he's muted.
Yeah, I can.
You may not have the speakers on.
Can you hear me?
We have audio.
Oh, they can hear.
People on the call can hear us.
So this happened last time. We had to turn on that dam.
Okay, hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you type out the answer? This thing.
Ron, try again.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now we can hear.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I know.
Wouldn't be because I'm muted, right?
No.
What did they do?
Yeah, we don't know. They walked over to that machine and did something.
They turned some knobs.
They were
Was he,
me.
Brian?
Yeah.
Let me ask another question then while we're figuring this out. You mentioned that you left the roof space open for solar. Is there, given the fact that solar can often be revenue neutral, even as part of the construction based on incentives and tax credits and things like that, is there an option for someone to come in with the solar?
So
It seems sort of, it's an extra step to build it afterwards.
Sure. That was vetted during the process, and it was decided that the town didn't. It was difficult to bring them on board ahead of time because you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we were locked into using them to construct the facility. We wouldn't be able to
A specific solar installer? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if you brought someone on for the actual design of it.
Doesn't sound right, but okay.
Can you hear me now?
The roof structure is designed, it has to be designed by code to handle a PV array. So the structure is ready.
Okay.
My recollection, I have to go back through our meeting notes, but in order to sign a contract with, for someone to design an array now, they would need to be on board then to build it.
Okay.
I think that from a legal standpoint, it would impact the way the bid process went, because we did have a company that was willing to design it, but they also wanted to lock in that they would be the ones reaping the benefit of the energy share, if you will. And that wasn't legal, I don't think.
It's not illegal. It's just not a smart thing to do. It's not a smart thing to do as part
It's
of
also public bid.
construction bid. Yeah.
You know,
Can you hear me
How
now?
many bids did you send out? Sorry, go ahead.
Right.
No, go ahead, David.
Couple more real quick ones. Can you describe the community space? We obviously don't have community space in the current one. What's the expectation for its usage?
It is a training room,
Is that
and
the green on the design? Yeah, thank you.
and it has the ability to use for something like we're doing now, or any type of public meeting or need the town may have. One of the things that I recently learned is because it had been asked of us or of me why we included a community room / training room in the design or in the program, because the MEC has a room. Well, the MEC doesn't have that room, and technically the MEC isn't town property, so we have no way to say the room, we want the room for this time.
Great.
And I did learn just recently, because we use the room for an assessment center, that the MEC is expanding, and that room will no longer exist. So this became even more important to provide space for us to conduct training and to do things like hold assessment centers or whatever, to bring in the DFS, Department of Fire Services, to do different programs, or for us to sponsor or host programs. Also to do our departmental training when we do larger scale trainings, which is usually, several times a year. We'd be able to do our briefings and debriefings in a more conducive space. Right now, we just kind of pull the trucks out of the bay and stay
Do it in the bay. Yeah.
opposed to having the training space. So one of the reasons that I wanted to make sure that it was something the community could use as well, is so that it is a multifaceted and versatile space that allows us to engage with the community more, and allows the community to be in the building more, because it is you all building also.
Great.
What's the square footage of that room? Of just that room?
I don't know what scale this plan is, but
It is 1,026 square feet.
One more, sorry. You mentioned hazard materials in terms of the demolition. Is there an asbestos? I mean, the original building is 60 or 55, some year.
yeah, I mean, we could get the report, but my guess.
But there's not any, I mean, you mentioned unexpected or unanticipated issues. I was curious about that, basically.
Steve Kirby from the Vertex Companies with the OPM. We have had a hazardous materials survey done, and there was also some slightly destructive exploration done, but we really couldn't take all the walls out of the interior of the building with the guys being in there. So we have unit prices for anything that may be over what was actually observed and is in the scope of work for either asbestos or any other kind of hazards like, fluorescent tubes and so forth. So if, when the building starts coming down, if there's a pipe in the wall that has asbestos fittings on it, that would be something that would be an extra for the contractor because they couldn't bid on it because they didn't know it was there. But we have accounted for it within our scope of work.
Thank you. That's it for me.
Couple of questions. How many bids did you send out? Or how many bids are you waiting? How many bids are coming back to you?
Go ahead.
We as part of this project, because it was greater than $10 million, we had to pre-qualify general contractors and file subbidders, part of Mass General Law. We went through that process that was on the schedule in around October timeframe. When the advertisement went out for the project, went out to bid, it had the list of those who could bid on it. The non-file subbids.
Can you mute again?
The pre-qualification doesn't affect the non-file subbids, but we don't know exactly how many contractors are actually going to bid on it from the time we pre-qualified them to when the bids come in, because they may win a job in between and decide that they're up to capacity. They can't handle the job. Ideally, I think we had
6 general contractors.
six pre-qualified. I'm hoping to get 4. I'd like to get 6, but I'm hoping to get 4 out of that. We are getting our filed sub bids this week on the 15th, this Thursday. Hopefully we have a good turnout. I've had 2 other projects that have bid recently that had a fair amount of subcontractors bid. Again, our main goal is to get, hopefully 4 to 6 for next Thursday. And then, we'll vet out the lowest bidder because it's low bid because it's public work.
And you're expecting it to come in around 25 million, but you don't actually
know
they're going to come back at?
No, our construction estimate is currently, which if you want to
19 million.
Yeah,
right.
But that's what you're expecting most of the bids to come back around.
Ideally, we are expecting them to come in lower because when we do the cost estimating, and both Dorn Whittier had their cost estimator, we hired our own cost estimator. These are professional licensed estimators. They don't estimate the project to win it. They estimate it for us to have a decent budget. So ideally, we'll have bid savings on bid day from what we're carrying at 19,536. And again, that's right now, that's a placeholder. We'll adjust that once we get the low bid on the 22nd, provided it's a responsive bid.
So I don't know if I can share. Ron wrote out a response, David. Oh, you saw it? Okay.
I saw it, but it was cut off. So
well, there's some that I think he accidentally wrote it as a direct message to me.
That's fine.
Air source heat pumps with dedicated outdoor air systems designed to provide only the amount of fresh air needed by the occupants to keep energy costs down. And then he starts talking about the hygienist, I think, in response to your question about the hazardous materials.
We reviewed ground source and it just wasn't feasible.
Okay. Thank you.
When was the desk estimate done?
The last construction estimate was done at 60% construction documents.
So
When was
that was October.
So yeah, so we've done them along the process. We had one at the end of the feasibility study, one at the end of schematic design development, and now 60% construction documents. And the last 2, as Steve pointed out, it's not just Dorn Whittier's estimator. We have a parallel estimate to try and zero in on the number.
And then we reconcile those 2 estimates. We have it's probably a 3-hour call with the 2 estimators, go through every line item, and they, So, they miss something here, someone missed something there. We combine those to come up with our current number that we're holding as a placeholder.
And is this level of contingency normal for this field? It's kind of a little light. I'm familiar with transportation bidding, and it seems a little light for that. But
The contingencies,
yeah,
we're carrying 5% of the soft costs as a soft cost contingency, carrying 5% of the construction costs as the construction contingency. On new construction, it's 5% is sort of the rule of thumb. You don't want to be really lower than that. We started higher because obviously you want as much contingency as possible, but we've reduced it because we're trying to get the budget to fit and be financially responsible for the town.
Go ahead.
I just want to say, having been on a couple of the meetings the board has held, that you guys have done an amazing job of both pushing for the lightest cost to the town possible, with also being responsible in what the department needs and the needs of growth over time, so we don't run into some of the situations you saw in other towns where they need to pause projects because it's unfeasible before construction is over. So just want to put that out there. The meetings have been exceptionally professional and balanced in terms of frugality and efficacy. I'm always worried when those happen that it ends up like wedding planner and someone wants the shrimp cocktail and then they get the bid, and that is not the process. So the question I do have is more on the mechanics of how we get to the vote. So we have this would be based on that, the January going to town for approval of the override. And can you talk through what the next steps are?
I mean, the big next step is getting our general bids, which is on the 22nd. In between the 22nd and the 11th, which is special town meeting, we'll put everything together, make sure it gets into the warrant, make sure our low bidder is a responsive bidder. Then we go to special town meeting on the 11th, and that is where the number will be. The ask, the actual ask will be presented, and then on the 28th.
What is the ask?
We don't know it.
We don't know that yet.
The town meeting vote is just to approve the project.
Yeah.
And then the ballot vote is for the actual debt exclusion.
Yeah, and the ballot.
But you're going to need to know the number at town meeting.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we are
Yeah.
not going to know the number for making our recommendation.
I understand that, but the way you said it made it sound like it was yeah.
Well,
I mean, right now
The
it's
number needs
estimated
to be
at-
discussed at town meeting, even if it's not going to be anywhere but in the final vote, right?
No, the number is going to be at town meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not how you said it. That's not how I heard it. So-
Okay, sure. The purpose of timing it out the way that we did was so that we had the construction bid number
Right.
for a special town meeting. And then the actual cost, the debt exclusion amount gets approved at the ballot vote.
Well, at town meeting, we'll vote on the number.
So town meeting will vote on the amount.
Basically, all we're doing at town meeting is
Election is
voting to
before
put it
ballot
on the ballot.
for the debt
Right,
exclusion.
but
For a
it would
number.
be a hard number. Town
Yes.
meeting,
Yes.
So,
I mean, it's roughly the ask is roughly going to be 22 million, because we have a total cost of 25 and change, but there's the remaining funds from the previous project of 3.3.
if the
That
bids
would-
come back where you think they'll come back.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we have professional estimators and two of them to try and get as accurate a number as possible. What I will say is, I think often we go to town meeting with estimates for projects in town. Well, we're trying to do this one better by having, while we don't have the number tonight, to have that number at town meeting. But so
Right,
that,
Mike.
So at this estimate, do we have a sense of the ballpark of what the financial impact is?
Todd, do you want to handle that one? I hate to make it get up.
I know.
He gets to talk about the fun stuff.
This was my next question.
Sure.
Anyway.
Todd is the best
was-
person to talk about this.
So many assumptions have to be made. And the ask of me was to say, okay, what do we anticipate the impact's going to be? Now, again, these are assumptions. So the numbers you're hearing are kind of a little bit in the range of 22 and change as the overall ask of the additional debt that we're going to need. Me being the conservative guy, I said 22.5 for the ask of the debt. And that's over a 25-year period. If I run the numbers with budgeting, right now, bond rates are 4 and change, but that potentially could go a little bit higher when we actually go to bond next year. And so I conservatively, again, put it at 5% for the interest rate. Taking those two into consideration, we've been looking at a debt service payment in the first year of about $2,025,000. And based on our current tax rate of 1641, that would equate to about 86 cents per thousand. And for the average single family tax bill, it's about $538. So that'd be the debt load. The annual operating budget would also be increased because we'd have to have more increased facilities through the electricity, additional cleaning, all the different things. That roughly estimates, based on talking with Matt regarding the operating budget, it's about 200 and change per year, 225. And again, that would be about a 10-cent impact. That's on the budget side, not the debt side.
So cost to homeowners would be around
$600 an average tax.
538 plus 225.
No, 538 plus the impact is $62.
Oh, $62.
Yep. 225,000 would be the add to the budget overall. So very conservative approach. Numbers probably going to come in lower on an average basis. And obviously, if you have a higher tax house, it's going to be more, but lower tax house is going to be less. But on average, tax implications about 600,000, probably most likely going to come in less.
Oh,
and 538 on just the debt, most likely come less.
okay. So around $600 annually a year per household.
But it would be reducing year over year because the debt would be going down.
Is there anything coming off?
2026, we have the KP debt coming off. That's of $400,000 at that time.
Okay.
And each
This
year,
would hit and what is the first year this would hit?
most likely 24 if we're going to, because I'll have to do a ban to get construction costs coming up and then bond it within the 24, 25, depending on timing. But again, I won't know until bids and schedules and things of that sort. So
When's the plan to go add the other wing to the FK?
out of my jurisdiction.
That has not,
That's not known yet. They're only in feasibility at this point. I mean, they don't even know what they need to build.
that will be a separate. Well, there are some initial thoughts on numbers of what they would be, but there's no hard numbers for that
We'd be
yet.
speculating at best.
Yeah. Well, so here's the biggest hurdle I see. I know I'm always the heavy blanket in the room. We don't know how much Freeman's going to cost. And we are asking the residents to vote on a fire station that should have probably cost about half as much as what it's going to end up costing, through no fault of anyone in this room. None of us were serving on the board at the time. None of us were on the select board at the time. None of us were the town administrators at the time. This is in no way reflective of anyone that is currently here. However, we're the ones that get blamed because that's just the way it works.
I mean, Susan,
you're here now. And
last time this was discussed at town meeting 8 or 10 years ago was a $14 or $15 million project. So it wasn't going to be half.
The fire
And
station.
it was voted down at that point.
Right.
Well, and it's nothing like this proposal, right? I mean, even that first slide that shows all the different proposals, this is.
I mean, I understand
much better
the issue is what happened with the police station, and that's going to be, someone's going to have to address that at town meeting. Again, it hasn't been fully addressed at a town meeting yet. It's always been shunted and dealt with someplace else, but that's going to have to be part of the discussions at town meeting, is the cost overruns for the police station, which has nothing to do again with. It's got everything to do with this project.
I don't know how to turn the computer volume up.
I'll bring up the memo notes for you.
I only have a Mac, so I'm an Apple person. I don't know how to
The
use.
volume's way up.
Yeah, that's way up.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Those speakers are over Bluetooth.
so that's what I was trying to say is that is, yeah, of course, that is the biggest hurdle. I don't think there's anyone who really says, meh, screw the fire station, screw the firefighters. I don't think anyone feels that way. But you know, these are hard costs to residents of the town, and it's, you know, it's a lot to swallow in 1 or potentially 2 calendar years. So we have to be able to explain, and I think you guys have done a fantastic job of showing this, but you have to be able to explain the numbers, explain why the costs are the way they are, taking into consideration that building costs are at an all-time high right now due to COVID. Most of it is due to COVID. And, you know, the expectation is that building costs are going to come down over time. And why it's necessary to do now. I think those are the questions that you need to be prepared to answer at town meeting. Because again, I don't think anyone's point of view, at least no one I've heard from, who says, we don't care. Do you know what I mean? I don't think anybody feels that way. I think it's just it's weighing how much debt can the town support at one time? And Todd, you would know that better than anyone, is what's coming on, what's coming off, what's coming up in the next few years, you know. And unfortunately, the fact that the Freeman Kennedy project needs to be done as well as the fire station needs to be done. This is the same situation. Unfortunately, for the fire station, they came in at the same time as the police station, and now they're coming in not jointly, but at the same time as a Freeman expansion. And it probably feels like to the people within the fire station that they're constantly getting, you know, the back burner or second treatment. And I don't want it to feel that way to you guys, but yet it has to be part of the conversation, not necessarily as far as you're concerned or Chief Kenny is concerned, but it does for Todd and Justin. Those are questions that people are going to ask is, okay, well, what's your best expectation of what Freeman is going to cost, the Freeman expansion? Even if you don't know, even if you are just speculating, they're going to want to know that. They just are. And saying that we don't know isn't helpful, in my opinion. I think being honest with the town and saying, here's what we know, and here's what we're expecting, and here's how we think it will impact you. And we understand that's hard to swallow at times, but here's why we need both of these. And we need your support for both of them. I know the instinct would probably be to say, not answer those questions, but I think that does a disservice. I think people just prefer everyone to be upfront and as honest as possible, even if it sounds bad. And even if you run the risk of alienating some people, it's still better to give all of that information. And I agree with Brian. I think that you guys on the design committee and the fire station committee, and you as well, Chief, have done an excellent job of breaking down the numbers for everyone and showing what the real costs are going to be and just owning it. That's my opinion. So
a couple of things I'll say to that is one, I mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I don't think anybody knows if construction costs are going to come down. They certainly spiked. It may be that they plateau or continue to go up. I think we can point to the Freeman Kennedy School that was constructed 10 years ago. And the idea was, okay, we don't want to spend the money to build shelf space, even though we know we're going to need it 10 years from now. And now we've gotten to the point where that portion needs to be built. It's going to cost more than it would have cost to build back then. I think that's why we're kind of it's not kind of why we're taking the approach here to build expansion into this building so that we build it now and this is the building. The department can expand into it while being cost conscious. You know, it's not a significant, the expansion area is not a significant portion of the square footage, but it is there that we're not going to have to come back 10 years from now and say, hey, we need to build onto the building. As far as discussing the school project at town meeting, I mean, I'll leave that to others to decide. I mean, we as a committee are not going to have any information.
Of course not. And that's not, that is 100% not your, that is not your role or your role at town meeting. But I think not being prepared and not at least having an estimation for people, not from you guys, but from the town, from Justin, from Todd, from the select board, from someone, that not having that answer would be worse, in my opinion. Yes, Joyce.
Who has any sort of discussion, any sort of numbers on the school committee, from the school committee regarding the school's cost?
Well, I would assume that Justin has been at least peripherally briefed on beginning numbers. Okay. Feasibility numbers, which are not hard numbers, but it's definitely part of the discussion.
All right, so beginning numbers, there's absolutely nothing from the school that has come to us. There may have been preliminary presentations to the Board of Selectmen, to any other group. Nothing to us. In my opinion, this fire station needs to go through, and it needs to stand on its own merit. Bringing something else in will cause additional controversy. It's a good proposal. They've done their work. The townspeople need to decide whether this and nothing else that this goes through. I
agree with you.
I actually do agree with that as well, but I think that saying at town meeting when this question comes up, we don't know. And saying we have no way, and not at least
they have no idea.
They have an idea,
but they don't have an idea that's based on, you know, engineer drawings or even schematic drawings or anything. It's I could throw, you know, 10 million, 62 million, both, you know. If you want to kill the fire station, let's talk about the school.
I don't, and I'm saying, but other people, no, I don't, but I'm saying other people are going to raise that question. They are going to. You're not going to be able to stop them from raising that question. It's part of the tax burden of the town. They're going to want to know.
I think as town leaders, it's our responsibility to say, folks, you have to vote on this proposal on its own merits. Talk about the school and the school comes out. Okay, it's not either or. Do you need a fire station or not? If you need a new fire station to serve the people of this town so that they're, you know, when they have a heart attack, they're picked up by an ambulance quick. Their house fires put out. If you need the fire station, you vote for the fire station. And when the school comes up, we'll talk about the school. That's leadership, not, you know, we got to worry about it. I can't sit there and worry about the 27 other million things that have come up. You know, God, the roads. All right, please, let's spend more money on the roads. There's 8 million things I could spend money on in this place. Let's talk about the fire station. If you need it, if it's time, we got to bite it and do it. It's $60 a month for the average, which nobody is person. Well, 600 a year, $50 a month. So, you know, I don't know. I don't mean to look impatient.
No. I have said this has nothing to do with not supporting or supporting the fire station. That isn't the point. But I think that to go into this blindly saying that it doesn't matter, it does. It does matter. All of it matters. Just like when the conversation about Freeman comes up, people are going to say, well, we just spent all this money on the fire station. That's going to be a talking point for Freeman as well. It's not like once we approve the fire station, hopefully it approves. It's like when we do that, people are then not going to mention it again when the Freeman expansion comes up. That's going to be a huge talking point at the discussion for the school. They go hand in hand because they're coming in the same calendar year. That is unfortunate for everyone. It would have been nice to have had a gap in between these two. But there's not a gap. So it's going to come up. It just is. It comes up in conversation every day. Every time I mention the fire station to anyone or Freeman to anyone, the other one is mentioned at the same time. So
it might be splitting hairs, but I don't think the school's going to come up in the same year.
That would be lovely if it didn't.
No,
Susan, I
that's,
think
that's a good
Yeah.
year plus
Go
design
ahead,
period.
Susan.
Just as a comment as a resident, this town meeting isn't for the schools,
It's
and I fully support both. But this isn't a town meeting being specifically held for whether or not we want to move forward with the fire station. I understand there may be questions, but to Rob's point, you know, when we have the information like we have for tonight to provide you with for the schools, we'll provide that information. It's a town meeting specifically for the fire station. Nobody's there to discuss what the potential expense of the school may or may not be. It's just, you know, and unfortunately, sure, it's difficult maybe to get up and say that and make that statement, but that's being as transparent as you can be because it's the truth. It's absolutely the truth.
That very well may be the truth, but I don't think that most people will be able to swallow that without some kind of answer. I'm just preparing you. I'm not saying I'm raising this question. I'm certainly not raising this question at town meeting. I'm just letting you know that you should be
we should
prepared.
probably see if there's anyone on there who wants to speak to us or any of these folks who want to speak to us because it's a public hearing.
We'll have yourself.
What?
Communication.
If we resolve the communication issue, of course.
Yeah, they're going to need to type their questions. So
Procedural question. Town meeting is simply to vote to put it on the ballot.
No.
Town meeting is approval for the appropriation, the
So
dollar amount.
What was mentioned before about?
Ballot question is whether or not we exclude the debt.
Did you get it under the, do you have enough room under the?
did they go hand in hand though, correct? So you have to approve, we have to approve it on January 11th for it to go on the ballot and then it has to pass on the ballot for the construction to start, or can one be
Both
done?
would need to be passed.
Both
Correct.
need to be passed, correct?
You can start the construction. The dollars can come later. The debt exclusion has to come first.
That exclusion has to come first. Okay.
So I just had an ex parte discussion, so I should enter it into the record. We have room under the levy to pass. So no, you don't need to do an override conceivably.
Oh, you mean within the?
Yeah.
For the whole project?
Okay,
We
you
do not-
don't have room under the
That's
levy.
correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Misinterpreted your question.
All right, so
That
was interesting.
This one is fine.
If this is approved at town meeting, we're moving forward with the project, independent of what happens on the ballot, or no?
No.
It would be,
They both. Yes.
we can't borrow the money until the town-wide vote happens.
And that's-
So we can't build the
can't
project
be
unless
done-
we can
why
borrow,
Can't that be done at town meeting as opposed to?
because we
ballot?
need to have, because it's a,
Has to be a.
it has to be an override to take, it
general
has to be a
law.
townwide vote to pull it out of our
So
regular,
why do we need it at town meeting to put it on the ballot?
2/3.
because that's the way that
Yeah,
general law is
that's the
set
way
up.
the Proposition 2.5 laws are written, that it has to be voted at town meeting and then.
All right, thank you.
And if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really already on the ballot. If it doesn't pass at town meeting, you can still vote to have the debt exclusion in case the project comes up later. That's a decision that would have to be made.
Correct. It would be allowed, just no appropriation for it.
Right.
Come back in the fall, springtime
Okay,
meeting.
I'm sorry. Wait 1 second. So if they vote, I thought if they voted no at town meeting, it was dead.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is if they vote at town meeting that it's
No, I'm
dead,
saying if they
you can
voted
still put it
yes.
on the ballot.
The debt exclusion.
The debt exclusion,
But the debt exclusion is not tied to any specific project at that point. You can come back in the fall and say, we're going to use that debt exclusion for the fire station.
once that's voted yes, then that stays.
So that's a
So
good,
it's so close, you
Need
might
new
as well
bids.
have it.
The bids would expire before.
Yes, you'd have to rebid the project.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
okay. If anyone on Zoom has a question, you can type the question and I will read it out loud. Okay,
I wanna
thank you.
click on the
Sorry.
tab.
Explanation of the town meeting.
Ed Haddad said Susan is correct in that every taxpayer will be concerned about how much money these projects are going to cost them. That was my only point, was just people are going to ask. What does he say? Hold on. Someone else says.
That was all during our
That was it.
discussion.
Okay. Does anyone have a question or a comment that they would like for us to read out loud since we can't get the audio You can raise your hand or just type it out and I'll read it aloud. Thank you, Paul. Anyone? No, Jonathan. Okay, go ahead. I'll read it as you type them. If you type them, I apologize for the interference with the audio.
So, Chief, this is to you, if I may. Can you maybe address real world implications to your team and the department if this doesn't pass, in terms of job retention, retaining firefighters, in terms of servicing the town, like from your professional perspective, what is the implication of the town with the building as is going forward?
Well, we all know that the job market is very competitive right now. It is going to be a significant negative impact to my ability to recruit new and also to retain current personnel when we have competing interests. When somebody can say, okay, I can go work at Walpole in a brand new facility and make similar money and not have to be in a trailer or traverse across a parking lot and potentially slip and be injured or whatever, expose myself to potential risks before I even get in the truck to respond to a call. The fact that I have to be in a trailer at all.
Or sleep on a floor.
or come in for a recall and have nowhere to lay my head or rest. Those are real challenges. We have had over the past 8 years, my union has we've lost 12 personnel, not exclusively to the station condition, but that has played a significant role. Many of those employees that we've lost have gone on to other departments, whether it be, Stoughton, Situate, Foxborough is a big one. And it hasn't always been a pay issue. Some of it is, that's just reality, but the living conditions or working conditions are a significant issue, and definitely impact, it impacts the department. I hate to share it, but we are as a department, not from an operational standpoint, not from our capability or professionalism standpoint, but from a facility standpoint, we are the laughing stock of this region. We are legitimately the only fire department in the state that has its living quarters as a trailer that is not truly a temporary trailer. This has been a temporary solution for about 18 to 20 years. So from that standpoint, yes, it is a significant challenge. It is something that, has and will continue to, have the implications from a recruitment and retention standpoint. And, it's one of those things that kind of is what it is. It is what it is. Like, this is what we have, and this is what, so it definitely has those implications.
Thank you.
For the chief, would you say our firefighters are compensated fairly versus other departments? And if retention is an issue, would it not be less expensive to the town to pay them more and get top of the line trailers in the back of the station so they're more comfortable? That is from Paul Burns, not me. I'm reading it.
We actually just worked on with the union and with the town officials, just spent a significant amount of time really working hard to create a fiscally responsible contract moving forward that implements a new step system that puts us more in line with the community surrounding us from a pay perspective. So we are going to be, comparable. That's already kind of been addressed. Just to share candidly some of my vision or some of the things that I've looked at as significant goals in my time here, which has been relatively short, but things that I mark kind of as important is I had three major goals, and one is to try to address, we have an aging apparatus. The town has done a great job with that. We've reduced the age, or the average age of our apparatus significantly over the last couple of years through using our capital improvement plan, and strategically using ARPA funds and free cash, which is excellent. The other being this contract to really, look at what other competing towns are doing, or what they are doing as far as their contracts, as far as compensation, with step systems and things like that. That has been, in essence, taken care of. And the other being, we've got to figure out a way to get a new station, because the working and living conditions, especially as we become busier, especially as the facility we're in continues to age and show its age, and it being overburdened, it becomes more and more challenging. So, that was one of the significant goals, is to try to champion this project, but also do something or propose something that was as fiscally responsible as possible to address the needs, and to, make sure the program fit. We weren't reducing what services we could deliver by cutting things out of the building, for example, or not housing all of the resources that taxpayers have poured their money into over the years in different buildings, or not in a building, which currently is what we're doing. We have resources that your tax dollars have paid for that don't fit inside of a structure. So to me, that was irresponsible, and I wanted to try to address that. So the station, is a significant ask, I know, and but it has a significant need. And as the town continues to grow, right now we are in a trailer that we've had to take what was the utility room, which had been adapted into locker space, and convert that into a bedroom / locker space / utility room. So, while that's not ideal, it's something we've done to adapt and overcome, but I can't grow anymore. I can't bring on another person, even as our call volume or the demands for our service increase. I am at absolute capacity. I can't do anything else. There's nowhere I can put another person. So trying to think about the future, and as we grow, the call volume is not going down. Demand for our services is only getting more or growing. So, trying to be conscious of that. The station is a major component of that, as it is the main nerve center, if you will, or that center cog where the deployment of all of the services that we provide the community, they come from there. It's like the nerve center. It's like our foundational launching point. And, right now, that's kind of a shaky foundation, if you will. We're exposing our firefighters to unnecessary risk. We're exposing our firefighters to carcinogens and things of that nature, just by the nature of the design of the building. It's old, it's antiquated. Safety features and things that the NFPA 1500, which is the health and safety standard, require, aren't even close to being. We can't implement them into the building. That's the thing. It'd be one thing if we could retrofit or try to adapt. We can't. In feasibility, we can't. There's nothing more we can do. We have gotten the absolute most out of the facility that we are currently in. So that's kind of where we stand as with the fire station as it sits.
Do you mind if I address a piece of this? Okay. Paul, in response to your question, and again, these are just my opinions. I don't think it comes down to what would be less expensive, because what would be less expensive would be doing nothing. And I don't think that's an option. Neither is overpaying firefighters to get them to stay in the job, but keeping their working conditions subpar. It's not just about keeping the firefighters conditions subpar. It's also about whether or not they're able to provide the services adequately to the town with the conditions that they currently have. I want to be clear that when I was having the conversation about how much something costs versus how much something doesn't cost, it was not because I think that the fire station money should not be spent. That was never an option. In my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, the town needs a fire station. I think that everyone can see that the town needs a fire station. Our firefighters are woefully, it's woefully inadequate what they're dealing with at this point. What is up for debate, in my opinion, the only thing that's up for debate is what the costs are, what the impact to the town is going to be, how it's going to be funded over the next few years, not whether or not it should be done. Again, this is an opinion. I want to make that clear. That's just my opinion. So I don't think that paying firefighters more is an option, because the fire station has to be done. It's just whether or not in what way and in what timeline. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Aaron.
Chief, can you speak to the discussions that were had in the working committee about potentially replacing temporary trailers as part of this project?
Yeah, I think it was, well, I know it was a subject that was brought up, and that originally firefighters were very adamant about, because the living conditions were so overburdened at the time. And it was decided in working group meetings collectively with the working group, as well as the building committee, but the firefighters, part of your, the union here, and the call firefighters, saying, you know what, we don't want to impede or add any additional cost to this project, or put anything that's a stumbling block into the cost of the project. So we're foregoing it. We don't, even though it was something that was discussed, and that in their minds, something that was going to happen. They felt like it was more important to look at the big picture and not, the right now. And their mentality is, we want this to succeed, and we want to do anything and everything we can to make it succeed. And if there are sacrifices that need to be made in order for this to have its best opportunity to succeed, then so.
And that saved $400,000 off the budget.
Okay, can I have someone on Zoom unmute, preferably Ron, who was having trouble earlier, and see if we can hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Nope. Okay, still not working.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to keep working on it while we're continuing the discussion.
Justin had something.
Yes, go ahead. Just introduce yourself first, please.
Justin Janosik. I'm a resident. I'm a member of the Fire Station Building Committee. I'm a firefighter in the area, and that was my perspective on the committee. I can say, in regards to just the compensation and the benefits to the town, that's not the only thing that firefighters consider when they choose a place of employment. The facilities are a large factor, because we know the higher rates of health conditions, especially cancer, in firefighters. And folks who take these jobs, they want to make sure that they have an adequate ability to take care of themselves, so they can be there to provide for their family. So a lot of folks that are leaving, they could be leaving not just to look at it from the viewpoint of, oh, I don't have a standard kitchen, or I don't have a good bedroom. It is a really narrow viewpoint that is pretty common in folks that haven't lived in a firehouse to understand what that's like. So if folks are leaving for the facilities, it's not just because of a kitchen or a bedroom. It's more because they don't have the appropriate gear storage, and their equipment doesn't dry, and then it makes them uncomfortable and more prone to hypo or hypothermia, or they don't have the ability to wash their gear as required by the NFPA. Additionally, in response to the cost for the town, there's numerous NFPA standards that apply to fire departments that they have to follow in order to be able to win state and federal grant money. And a lot of these relate to the vehicles. The size and height and width of the vehicles is set by elements outside of our control. And it's already happened where the vehicles are too big to fit in the current facility and the facilities had to be modified to house them. That's not going to get any better. That the apparatus are growing. They need to have a certain size brakes, certain size tires, certain size suspensions, and none of those are going to go down because those are all elements that add to safety. So it's not just as simple as saying, oh, if we put a trailer here and we house the folks, then we've solved the problem. Well, before long, now you're going to be losing out on grant money that you use to replace the apparatus. The apparatus that you do buy are not going to be housed inside, which is going to increase your insurance costs. Additionally, the folks that set the insurance rate for the homeowners look at facilities and judge the facilities and base the insurance rates partially on what type of facilities and equipment the fire department has. So these things are all connected together. And all of it revolves around having a good building that's a part of the critical infrastructure of the town. And currently Norfolk does not have a good piece of critical infrastructure. And I know that's not happy to everybody. I know that everyone's going to talk about the school and whatnot. And I'm, as a resident, I completely agree that these are totally separate issues. And as a resident, I don't think that there's anyone that would take a serious line to say, well, we should just put the students in the trailers. If the school was in the shape that the fire station was in, we wouldn't be having these meetings. It would be fixed already. That's my opinion as a resident. Leave it at that. Thank you.
That's very, very good point.
If I could add
yeah,
something really.
I don't think that really necessarily matters. It's not germane to the discussion, but if you'd like to go ahead and answer it just for information, you can. I think the reciprocity is equal from our town to other towns. And I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not we need a fire station. Not to dismiss your question. I don't want to be rude. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I don't believe that has anything to do with whether or not a fire station needs to be built. But from what I understand, when we have a need, other towns are there for our fire station. And when our other towns need us, we are there for them. It's equal reciprocity. If it's more often that we go to other towns, then that's just luck and great.
Every incident that we have that is significant within our borders, I guarantee you there are at least 3 or 4 other towns coming to support us.
Yeah.
Even when we go to another town to support them, there's usually another town coming to support us while we're supporting someone else. So it's a big, the mutual aid community we have here. I am a part of the Norfolk County Fire Chiefs Association. We do a lot of work together because most of, if not all of the organizations within Norfolk County, none of us are big enough to go at it on our own. Even places like Brookline or Quincy, which are bigger departments, you know, are involved in mutual aid cooperatives and using, you know, other towns to support their job. And that is what makes delivering the services we deliver affordable, actually. If we had to provide all of the services we provide to this town without the support of our mutual aid partners, the cost would be astronomical. So it is
you'd need more firefighters on duty at any given time.
Yes.
Ron, can you try one more time if you're there to unmute and speak? We might have a solution.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can hear people. If you'd like to unmute or raise your hand, I will call on you. If I don't see you after a few seconds, just unmute and say excuse me and let me know you'd like to say something. I don't always see the hand raised right away. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry if this is pedantic, but a follow-up to the apparatus size. And if you go back a couple slides in the 2019 or whatever it was proposal, the apparatus bay was like 10,000 square feet. And in the current proposal is like 8,000 square feet. So as a general rule, if the size of the apparatus is growing, why are we shrinking the bays from the 2015 proposal to today by like 20%?
Can I answer that one?
To maybe rephrase that, I guess, is the 8360 sufficient for the growth that we're planning and for increase in apparatus size to the best of our ability to project it? And if so, I guess, why did we think it wasn't in the last the last go around. It just seems odd that everything else is scaling up except that's scaling down.
May I answer?
Of course.
Can you hear us, Ron?
Yeah, I can. So is that, yeah, so what we've done is, if you look at the apparatus bays in our design, they're not separate. They're all together. And so what you also see here is it's a new building. It's not an ad reno. So if we were to take these apparatus bays or the space we have for the apparatus, you can see that everything we've tried to do is spatially, spatial efficiency was the number one priority. So if we were to take these and disperse them, you have more net to gross walk around space, corridor space to get around the vehicles, opening the doors and so forth. And so because we were able to locate all the apparatus within basically a box, if you will, we're maximizing the amount of apparatus space that's required by the codes, at the same time minimizing the net to gross. And so I think sometimes what's not understood a lot is when you do an addition renovation, you're stuck with the buildings that you're trying to renovate, right? They've got exterior walls, structure, things like that. So when you try to shoehorn it in there, your program actually gets larger. And so in this particular instance, what you see here is we do have room for growth in the apparatus bays. But at the same time, it brings, as the chief said, all of your equipment that you've invested in into the building. So you no longer have anything stored outside.
Thank you. Makes sense. And just quick follow-up. When you say we have room for growth, all of the boxes, I presume denoting vehicles and apparatus, do I understand we don't own that many at the moment, meaning there's going to be some empty space where future vehicles could go. Is that correct? Like we don't own that many trucks.
So actually we do own that many trucks. Every box there represents a vehicle that we currently own. So one thing that is different about the growth of a fire department in many cases versus the growth of other municipal organizations is where we're going to grow or see growth is in the manpower or the bodies that we staff with on a day-to-day basis 24/7. So right now I have full-time staff supplemented by call firefighters. As we grow, the number of full-time firefighters is going to grow, which means we'll have more individuals in the seats of those vehicles and actually be able to take those vehicles out right now. Where what we do now to keep our deployment and how we provide service to the community affordable is we have 4 full-time people 24/7. And then we supplement that with our callback staff, which is call firefighters and full-time firefighters that come back when there is a larger emergency or to cover when we're out for an extended period of time on a routine emergency. So when we grow, what we will end up doing is adding people. We're not going to necessarily need to add apparatus. So what we have as an apparatus complement meets what the insurance rating organization says or ISO says we need in terms of our pumping capacity, our water carrying capacity, and our suppression capability is all present within the town. If we get to a point where that needs to grow, that will also indicate that we need to locate another facility somewhere else because the population density will be to a point where serving the town from one facility will no longer be feasible. So that would require significant, probably doubling the population, at least, for that to come into play. So what's built into this building is for us to grow and to be able to serve the town up until we get to a point where we would need 3 fully staffed ambulances 24/7 plus fire companies, which is a significant way off in an actuality from what I talked to our town planner and kind of what the state says in projections and things moving forward. We would be in this building providing services for at least 25 to 30 years before we would hit a point to where the demand for service would have to outpace what this building is able to provide. Thank you. I did want to make one other point just of clarification, because we talked a lot about expense and cost. So I don't like to try to do doom and gloom, but this is a distinct reality and something that could happen, and that I actually have had happen, and I have personnel records to show it. I can't show them to you, but we have had injuries, on the job injuries, due to traversing across the parking lot when it is wet or frozen. I have had 3 individuals fall and injure themselves trying to respond to a call, or just routinely walking from the trailer into the bays just to do their routine duties in service. So, you know, I don't like to do the what if, but the reality is, if that happens again to an individual and they happen to have a significant back injury or break a rib, something like that, that cost to the town can be way over $300,000-$400,000 a person. And also that injury, we're going to have to carry and have that burden for the duration of that person's life, which there's no cap or known cost of what that could potentially be. The other thing that we need to account for as well is that when we have Rentham or Foxborough or any of our neighboring communities come in to support us and provide station coverage, if one of their firefighters is coming from the trailer, slips and falls and gets an on-the-job injury, we are now burdened and responsible with carrying those costs because it happened to our property on our watch. So again, there are cost implications and potential significant cost implications to how we are doing this. And it's just something that I wanted to try to highlight. Again, I don't like to play doom and gloom and be like, oh, you know, the world's going to come to an end, but it is a distinct risk and a possibility. And in my world, when there's a risk that is predictable, it's preventable. So if we can do something about it by, you know, addressing the facility, then, you know, again, one of the reasons I'm trying to champion and advocate for this, because it does have financial implications, ones that are not capped or that we won't be able to put a hard estimate on or a hard number on, because I know the fire service as a whole, there are billions of dollars spent every year on injuries, back injuries being the number one. But, you know, I don't want to be a part of that group. And I certainly don't want to be a part of that group from something that I could potentially prevent, or a slip and fall. Or the other thing that bothers me or worries me is when they traverse across the parking lot and we're in this pouring rain, if we're happening to go to a structure fire in that instance, what the general public may not know, but I'm going to try to explain to you now, is when you put yourself wet into bunker gear that is designed to protect you from heat, that heat has to go somewhere. But then when that water on your body heats up, it also has to go somewhere. So the gear is designed to protect you and insulate you from the heat. But guess what we'll also do? Just like a piece of aluminum foil keeps a baked potato from necessarily, but it still cooks it. Firefighter will get cooked inside of their gear when exposed to those extreme temperatures if they are wet. And it's something that bothers me or worries me, is because I have unfortunately had steam burns before. It's not fun, but those are things that worry me. But those are also things that, you know, are going to have cost implications, because it affects the health and well-being of the personnel. And, you know, if you're talking about on-the-job injuries and downtime and paying overtime coverage and all those things, all of those costs are compounding. So there are potential significant costs to, in essence, kicking the can down and really not do something, you know, with our limits.
I think my question might be for Todd. Are any of the capital expenses or soft costs covered by ARPA or within the scope of ARPA funds? So I know we still don't have all those allocated, right?
I believe there was a discussion tonight, the select board meeting with regards to ARPA finalization, but we don't have any finalized. We have a lot of items that have been spoken for already and identified some major concerns. So we can probably not do
Yeah, if they could defer some of it, but if that's outside the scope of terms of use. That's okay.
This is more of a gut exclusion.
One more question for you, if you can. I'm not sure. You're the project manager, correct? Can you tell me the difference in so I'm involved in building, so I understand building costs for residential. But is there a huge difference in what you would consider commercial building costs versus public safety building costs? Like, for example, you can build residential square footage to commercial square footage. It's not apples to apples. You can't compare them. It's the requirements that are there. Commercial space is more. Is public safety building and commercial similar in their cost per square foot, or is it vastly different for public safety square footage?
Well, the first thing is there's also another factor. This is public work versus private work. Public work is all prevailing wage, and prevailing wage never goes down, it always goes up. So sort of going back to one of the comments about, you know, maybe costs will go down. Labor always goes up year after year, even pre-pandemic. But as far as building types, there are, I mean, this particular building is a risk category 4 building because it's a fire station. That's a code issue. It also has the NFPA code requirements that have decontamination. So you can't compare a fire station to a town hall. Town hall is sort of like a bunch of offices, still a commercial building, but fire station has more to it than a town hall or a library or potentially a senior center.
Yeah, it has to be designed and constructed as a survivable building. Basically, if we get an earthquake or a major hurricane or a major snowstorm, it has to be operational.
So it's an even higher cost than straight commercial, which is even higher than public safety or commercial.
Private, yeah. Yep. Because a lot of times we'll be on a project in a municipality and someone says, well, I can get a carpenter for $25 an hour. Like, well, that isn't prevailing wage. Prevailing wage is probably an average for tradesmen is $100 an hour. That's what you're paying for because you have not only the prevailing wage, but all the labor burden that goes on it. So your general contractor is figuring those numbers. It's vastly different from private.
Do you know what the cost per square foot is for this project by any chance?
We have that at 731, I think it is.
Yeah. Well, this is the average. That's the average cost for construction.
Ron, do you happen to have that cost per square foot number handy?
Yes, we're at 731. So right now we're below the average cost, which is 759.
And I have other projects going on and we've compared those, and that's I have other projects that are slightly higher.
Go ahead.
Do you have any idea what happened in Southbridge? So we give the Southbridge example where they went out for debt exclusion 25 and then the final bid was 10 million over. Can you give us some color as to what actually happened there?
Timing of the project, like they were ahead of the pandemic and a lot of their development, and then the bids and stuff came in after. So they had a number. This is what I kind of, this is what I'm assuming. I don't know that to be 100% factual, so don't, but I do know that timing wise, they had been in the development or feasibility stage pre-pandemic, and they were down to the, you know, the final stages. And then.
So the program didn't change. No, they came back and said we want a third more.
No. This was all due to, you know, cost increases. And
I have 2 other projects that the appropriation was done in 21. We're bidding them now, but I mean they're out to bid. But what changed in design? Essentially, we were going from, great example. It was a brick facade that's now fiber cement facade because we had to find value engineering so that we didn't have to go back to the taxpayers of this particular municipality but still build the building. We didn't touch anything on the inside. The program is the same. So we said, where can we make value engineering cuts outside of the building, site work things? And that's because, I mean, you know, essentially, and no one can predict the numbers from based, you know, that were impacted by the pandemic, but you know, they were doing the right thing. They got their money, they got appropriation. Let's go with the project. And then starting design takes a year. Everything goes up. I mean, we're seeing escalation average is about 12% a year, where it used to be 4 to 5, maybe 6%. So it's 1% a month of your, whatever your starting construction is. Just keep adding to it until you get a bid and a contractor on board.
Oh, I was having this discussion earlier with someone, with the exception of, obviously, I'm not talking about building for public safety, but just building in general. Pre-pandemic, a 2x4 was around $4.62 roughly each. During the pandemic and just after, they were $9 a piece, and now they're down to around $7. So it's starting to level off a little bit, but they almost cost almost more than doubled for just 2x4s for plywood, for very, very basic costs that you need, very basic things that you need for building. So not surprising that it went up by $10 million if they bid it pre-pandemic and built it after the pandemic. So
yeah, the other problem with the pandemic is your supply chain issues and your long lead times. What we're doing now, and we did it in this project, you notice this the award date and the start of construction, there's a little bit of a gap. We're working in a 2-month period where the contractors will send in their submittals and keying in on the long lead items like generators and air handling equipment, get those approved and release early before they actually start the work. That way we don't have guys working on site and adding costs just for general conditions. It's a strictly paperwork, procurement enabling, and there's a number of different terms for it, for them to get their submittals in and get their materials released. Generators went from a 25-week lead time pre-pandemic to 52 weeks, and they're now about 65 weeks. They're not getting, it's not getting better.
I was just gonna, if there's nothing further, I think
he had a question. I was just looking at him. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Other than square footage, have you BE the project already? Has it been through a BE scrub, value engineering scrub?
This project? Yeah. Oh yeah, multiple times.
Why didn't you answer that?
Does anyone have any online via Zoom or in the room have any questions for Kevin, Justin, anyone else on the fire station committee? Okay. If there's nothing else, you're welcome to stay. But I think we're gonna have a discussion and take a vote. You obviously, no one needs to leave. It's an open public meeting. You can stay, but if you are on a time crunch, you're welcome to go as well. So I open it up to the board. Start sessions. Anybody have anything they want to discuss with the board? We have to
vote again.
No.
I'm
do you have a number?
No.
Or, okay.
I'm gonna make
choices tonight are, we have, and God, please tell me I got this right. Our choices are to vote to approve or recommend to approve, like we usually do for any normal typical article that appears on the warrant. We can vote to IP it, and we can vote no. We can also vote yes or vote to approve. I believe I spoke to Justin about this. We can vote to approve with a caveat that says as long as the number that they get next week does not exceed the number that was presented to us. That can be a piece of it. So we can say yes with these stipulations, and that is what will be printed in the warrant, or we can IP it and say we will vote on town meeting floor the day of town meeting when we know the number, or we can just vote yes, or we can just vote no. We have multiple options. And that is what is open now for discussion.
I would make a motion that we move to approve the proposal to bring this to town meeting with a cap of 22,500,000 as a not to exceed number,
not to exceed number.
500,000.
I will need someone to volunteer to write the recommendation for this as well. It will need to be fairly involved, and I made some notes. But I think Kevin would be happy to share his presentation with us so that we have more information for when we're writing it. Obviously, we don't need to spread out recommendations. There's only one article for this meeting. So do I have any volunteers for anyone who wants to write it and present it? I will also be writing most likely depending on who is taking this on and how detailed they want to get, I will also write and share a letter up for the cover with some of these details in it. But does anyone? Just oh, Justin, yes, thank you.
You may have to unmute him.
Hi.
Wait a minute.
Good evening, guys. Sorry I'm not there. I was a little under the weather and we had a select board meeting. I just want to put one other thing there. Whatever the board does decide to do, I would say that you have the flexibility. Generally speaking, you have an advisory committee meeting before town meeting. There will be a hard figure by that time. The bids will close the 22nd. What you could do is you could reconsider your vote at that point and just put an actual, the dollar amount as it is. Because it seems like the board, the advisory is leaning towards doing a not to exceed number, if I heard it correctly.
Yes.
No, we have to.
Well, I made that motion. We haven't discussed it yet.
We haven't decided that yet, but that is a conversation that we're having. Is a motion would be made potentially to vote to approve, but not to exceed number X. And then in the chair letter, I can also, if that's the way the board would like to go, we can also say that we are going to re-vote in the meeting before town meeting, if anyone would like to attend that. I don't know if that would be necessary as long as the bids come in with what they're expecting, either at or below what they're expecting. And they seem to be pretty confident that it's going to come in at or below.
Right.
They feel like they have enough cushion built in that it's not going to come in above, right? Is that what I understood from you guys? They did enough legwork that they don't feel it's going to come in above.
Don't ascribe.
Oh, we hope.
I think someone's what you're doing.
I'm saying don't hold them to that. They're not going
They feel. I didn't say that.
We hope.
Okay. All right. I was just coming at the tail end as I just got in. So I just wanted to make sure you guys know that you have that flexibility. So I'll let you guys handle it from here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if there's
I don't necessarily support a not to exceed on a hard dollar amount, because speaking personally, I'd vote yes for this at the number presented. I'd also vote yes for it if it was 5% higher. Right, the overall impact to any individual taxpayers, 5% difference. I don't think that's going to sway yes or no, right, for people who will or won't support it. So I'm okay with a not to exceed, but perhaps we can structure it as a not to exceed 5%, whatever the amount is, plus 5%, because I wouldn't necessarily want to have it printed and presented at town meeting that we don't support this because the bid came in at $50 more than was presented to us.
So we have to have a not to exceed at all.
Right.
We have the flexibility.
That's fine. I just put it out there. I'm not wedded to anything.
Giving the options of what we have.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
I mean, if it
But
comes
we
in.
have a lot of options. We can vote yes, regardless. We can vote yes with a not to exceed. We can vote to IP until town meeting when we have.
No,
a final
I don't want to
number.
vote. No, we would. Yeah.
No,
I think we got.
I am not making that motion.
No, but we don't. That's not an option. We're going to
saying-
re-vote it. We're going to vote.
True, David. There are options, and we have to discuss what all of the options are. This is a
Susan.
So we have to discuss what all, there are multiple options. So anyone who feels a motion is ready has the floor to make a motion, and then we can vote on it. That's the way the board works. We don't just have one option ever. So
I do have like a very simple question, which is, what is the motion? Like not the motion. What is the warrant article? Because usually we have the words that are written, and I don't know what I'm even voting yes or no.
Well, it's in the packet. Was it? If it's not,
can we display the packet though?
I don't think it's in this presentation. Oh, okay. That's attached to it.
Brian, can you want my copy?
I'll pull it up here.
See, that's kind of what I'm wondering too, because we got a couple things. I mean, Todd was saying it's an appropriation vote, which would be, wouldn't that be the full nut? And the sources are the override and but you get the 3.3 number. So are we voting the override number, or are we voting a total appropriation number, which would be 25? Just the override number.
I think
What we are voting is to see if the town will appropriate a sum of money for the purposes of demolishing, reconstructing, originally equipping and furnishing a new fire station located at 117 Main Street, including all incidental and related expenses. To meet said appropriation, to authorize the treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow such a sum under and consistent with blah, 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 other source of authority, and to issue bonds and notes necessary for that purpose. Said amount contingent upon passage of a Prop 2.5 debt exclusion ballot question in accordance with blah, 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 or to take any action related thereto. So we are voting to appropriate the funds as well as place this as a ballot question.
we're not voting to place it as a ballot.
No, that's what it says right here. It says notes necessary for that purpose and amount contingent upon the passage of Prop 2.5 debt exclusion ballot question.
That's what's been shown to. Yeah, that's not us. It just says.
Yeah, selectmen.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, the board, sorry, the board places a ballot, a debt exclusion. The advisory is not voting on that. The language that's in there is for essentially to give if the debt exclusion were to fail, essentially, we're not going to keep this appropriations approved, because then the town would have to find that fund within the levy limit. So that's why the language is there. But the select board has already put it on the ballot. So the advisory is not voting on that particular. That's why the language is included there.
I don't think they meant advisory. I think they mean at town meeting. Are they voting on that?
Yeah, so it's contingency language. Think of it like that. But it's already on a ballot.
It's already on the ballot.
Because yes, the select board is
so we don't
determined
need
of
this
that.
to pass that town meeting to be on the ballot.
Right. You technically, so there's some technical stuff here, so I don't want to go too in the weeds. However, for example, let's say town meeting voted to approve this project, and then you had the ballot, and let's say it failed. Technically, you could revisit that within 90 days, or vice versa. If the town meeting didn't vote for it and the town voted for it on the ballot, then you could revisit it at special town meeting. So that's why you have that contingency language, just in case one or the other votes for it and the other might not.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But my question is, the 3.3 million was not for this. It was for the police station. Doesn't that have to be reappropriated? No.
It was a public safety project.
Right.
Combined together.
Okay.
So given this language of the warrant, I see that any cap on our approval would be absurd, because the language is to approve whatever's approved. So I'm
approve whatever the bid is.
Yeah.
The logistics for town meeting actually is, so in town meeting, you'll have a motion that includes the figure, the final figure.
Right.
Yeah. So the motion is
when the person who's writing the recommendation to be printed in the warrant, do you want us to include the estimated 22.5 number?
No,
because we'll have the real number.
No, we won't.
I personally, so
well, we will, but people need to know in the warrant. That's what I'm saying. Do we want to include that the estimate? Do we want to make a note that the estimated cost is around 22.5? That's what I have these notes written down. I have 25 million total, 25,376, 3.3 left over, with the difference being 22.5. 22.0, sorry. And then I have the schedule in which we're planning to do the process, and the various other things, and the estimated average hit to taxpayers annually. Usually when we do like the operating budget for the year, and then we include those different things, like the biggest numbers and an overall cost and things like that. So I'm just asking for whoever it is that ends up writing this, do you want them to include that in the recommendation?
So Susan, you're directing that to me or to
Yeah.
your member?
Well, it's not his business, it's our business.
Yeah, I was
We can
about
write
to
whatever we
say,
want.
yeah, I was going to defer to the committee, the advisory group. I if you're asking my opinion, I probably wouldn't include that because you're going to have a final figure at town meeting. But that's really your call. I don't feel comfortable saying one way or the other.
Okay. Well, it's not really going to matter because in the cover on the chair letter, I'll include all of this information anyway. So
right.
Does the price matter to you guys? That's the
price does matter, Rob,
Right.
but it doesn't matter for the purposes of the vote.
Right.
That's
We're
what
gonna
I'm saying.
come
So
back-
I'll
we're gonna do that
withdraw
night.
my motion and someone else can make a motion.
So I move to appropriate 20.
No, you do not want a number in it.
To approve. I'm not, all right, so I'm not gonna vote.
Okay, I make a motion.
Because you can always change.
I make a motion to support the article as written.
Second.
Oh.
With the caveat that we vote on it
you are welcome to
prior
make
to
a
town
different
meeting.
motion. Well, are you going to vote on this motion though? Because we need everybody to. Okay, motion stands on the floor and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Rob?
So we're gonna come back that night and we'll talk about the number.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, then if there is, Jesus Christ, this might be the most contentious meeting amongst the board I think I've ever seen in my 5 years here.
You haven't been paying attention.
Oh, I've been paying attention. No. We are contentious with the people.
No, let's just, Susan,
Not
just
with each
move on. I have to go home and
All right, roll call vote, please. Joyce Terrio. Brian Beachkowski.
Aye.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Aye.
David Lukes.
Aye.
Mikey. Rob Garrity. Susan Klein, aye. It passes. Who wants to write this recommendation for the love of God?
I gotta go.
Somebody be detailed, please. Somebody has to step up.
I'll write it. When's it due?
No.
I'm going home to do something tomorrow.
Going to the printer. Shit, I don't have those today. So, 27. Printer on the 27.
Good job. You know, I'm going to Montreal for you.
I would say as soon as possible.
Yeah, I know, but it's, I know, but it's.
So they can have the number, right?
You're sending it to the printer on the 27th.
You'll get it by next Wednesday. You'll get it by next Wednesday.
That's perfect.
You could
Next
have it
Wednesday-
to him by the 24th of December. That would
I'm
be
getting it to you by next Wednesday because I'm leaving on the 23rd.
Oh, you start the vetting right away. We have very short time. So.
At the same time as well. And as always, you will have you can feel free to edit the chair letter as you see fit.
No.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, I do. I can do whatever I want when it comes to that. Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you very much.